Okay, so welcome to this Module 5D presentation where we'll discuss the factors that affect the family and how stress can affect children. Now, there are different types of family. Discuss throughout these modules that family can mean different things to different people, can mean different things to an adult you're caring for, can mean different things to a child you're caring for. And you, as the caregiver, have to support your patient's view of who constitutes their family. Some children come from homes with a single parent, others may have parents who are divorced or a parent who has died. Some children live in blended families where a parent has remarried, and they may or may not be children from the new parent's previous relationship, or even new children from the marriage. So these adjustments have to be made for the child, and it may be difficult for the child to deal with such adjustments. Divorce may be particularly difficult for children, and they may express emotions such as anxiety, depression, sadness, and anger. Some children may even act out and have temper tantrums. They may start fights, they may get in trouble in school. Caregivers should provide support to the children by allowing them room to express their thoughts and emotions. If you, as the caregiver, have concerns about the adjustment of the child in your care, these concerns should be discussed with your supervisor. The social worker may be able to help or work with the child to assist them to adjust to these changes, because these are stressful time periods for the whole family and especially for the child. So what are some guidelines for communicating about divorce, especially if you're saddled with such responsibility to communicate an impending divorce with a child you care for? You want to explain that a separation is not a child's fault and that they're loved by both parents and the entire family. You want to ensure that the child understands that they will still be taken care of by their parents and by others who love them. You want to give the child room to express their thoughts and feelings. Some children may prefer to talk about what happened, and others may want to withdraw. We don't even want to communicate, but most children generally want to talk about what happened and even about what they feel around it. So you want to draw out such feelings. Then you want to encourage the family to maintain routines in the home and to keep rules and traditions as constant as possible for the child. And you want to encourage the parent to explain to the child the reasons for the separation in a way that such a child would understand. Now, there are different styles of parenting. Dana Bormind is a developmental psychologist who described 4 types of parenting. There's the authoritarian parenting style. And this type of parenting style, they have firm limits that are placed on the children, and parents would expect the children to do as they are told without question. Those are the kind of parents who tell you children are meant to be seen and not heard. And parents may spank the child, may be threatening, and may even enforce rules without explaining why such rules are in place in the first place. And a typical statement by an authoritarian parent may be, do it because I said so, or else there'll be trouble, or else you get a spanking, or else there'll be punishment. And children from this type of parents may be fearful, they may be unhappy, and they may have poor communication skills. So here is a picture of the 4 parenting style. The authoritative parenting style is highly demanding of their children, and they are also highly responsive. This is said to be the best type of parenting style. Authoritarian are highly demanding, but their responsiveness to the children is quite low. Permissive parenting, they do not really have a high demand of their children, very low demanding, and they're highly responsive. Whatever the child wants, they give it to them. And uninvolved parents are those who are low demanding and they are low responsive, literally like they're unavailable, and such children have to raise themselves by themselves. Okay, then the authoritative parenting style, which I said is the best. Limits are placed on children, but there's a verbal give and take between the child and the parents. Children are encouraged to be independent within limits. Parents are nurturing and they demonstrate warmth towards the children. A typical statement by an authoritative parent may be, let's talk about why I want you to follow this rule. Now, children from this type of parents are often positive, they learn self-control, and they learn to be cooperative with others. Neglectful parenting. These parents are generally uninvolved with their children. The child is allowed to do whatever they want, and a typical statement by neglectful parents may be, I don't care, do what you want, I'm busy. Children from this type of parents tend to have low self-esteem, and they may end up in risky situations in which they get into trouble. Indulgent parents. In this type of parenting, parents are very involved with their children, but they do not place enough limits on such children. They are overly permissive, and children are allowed to do whatever they want, although the parents care and is involved. A typical statement by an indulgent parent may be, it's okay, you can do what you want. I want you to be able to control your own life. Children cannot do that. They need to be taught to control their own life. And children from this type of parent tend not to learn self-control, and they expect to get whatever they want. Authoritative parenting tends to be positive with the most positive outcome for the children. Now, if the caregiver have concerns about parenting styles, they can see, if the caregiver have concerns about the parenting styles, you can see in the home, and especially if it's beginning to have some telltale effect on the child you care for, you want to discuss such with your supervisor. You can help them develop a plan for educating the parents about other ways to communicate with and set limits for the children. And you also want to remember that there may be cultural differences in parenting. How children are parented in Asia is different from how children are parented in Africa. For example, Asian American parents tend to be authoritarian, but in a less dominating way. Latino families also tend to use a more authoritarian approach, but in a way that emphasizes respect and is not threatening. African American parents also tend to be more authoritarian, and they may use spanking. However, the use of physical punishment within these different cultures has been shown to have more positive outcomes with the African American families. Why it's important to promote the most positive parenting style, it is also important to be aware of cultural differences and what may work best within one culture versus another, regardless of where you work. Now, socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status means the social and the financial level of the family. Families who have low income may have less access to resources than families from a higher income. They may need more support from the caregiver and more assistance to find resources available to them. So it's important to ensure that the family has access to resources such as food, clothing, and healthcare. There are resources within communities to help families who may be struggling. There are some wealthy communities that the elite would provide for the less privileged. Then the government also provide such. So federal and state financial assistance may also be available for these families with a low socioeconomic status. So the care aid wants to discuss such concerns with your supervisor, and you want to see how you can best meet and help these families. Children from low income may also struggle in school. They may feel embarrassed if their family is unable to afford the latest trends in clothes and technology. They may struggle with schoolwork and may not be getting the help they need at home. And if you have any concerns around such, you want to share it with your supervisor so that some issues can be addressed within the care plan. Now, domestic abuse is also another thing that affects children, everybody within the family, essentially. Domestic violence is abuse that occurs by spouses, intimate partners, or family members. It can include any type of abuse, such as physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, or sexual abuse. Domestic abuse and the different types of abuse were discussed in Model 2, if you can remember. Child neglect or maltreatment is when a child is harmed by a caregiver, whether it's a family member or a healthcare worker. So when the caregiver fails to provide necessary care, that is also considered child neglect or maltreatment. This could include failing to provide for the basic needs of a child, such as food, shelter, or clothing. Neglect can also mean abandoning the child or being inattentive to the child's emotional needs and neglecting the child's education. For example, if a child is allowed to miss school, so they do not get an adequate education, that is considered child neglect. Neglect can just be as harmful as abuse. In fact, child neglect would occur more often than child abuse, and it can go undetected. Here is a child being or about to be abused by an older person, probably a family member. So domestic abuse still, children who come from homes where domestic violence occur may have adjustment problems. They may suffer from anxiety, depression. They may have trouble forming positive relationships with others. They may have low self-esteem. They may get into trouble, or they may even engage in risky behaviors. And children who come from abusive homes are at risk for later becoming abusive themselves, particularly the male children from such homes. And female children, daughters from such homes, are likely to end up in abusive relationships themselves, almost like perpetuating the cycle of such abuse. And problems with alcohol and drug abuse, depression, and anxiety can occur later in life as these children grow up. If you, as the health caregiver, ever notice any sign of domestic violence or child abuse or neglect, you want to immediately report such to your supervisor. And by law, all healthcare workers are required to report incidents of child abuse. So, regardless of where you work, you want to refer to your agency's policy on the guidelines for reporting such. Now, again, based on where you work, laws may differ from state to state and country to country about how to report child abuse and neglect. So you would always want to follow your agency's rules, your state and country law for reporting suspected child abuse and neglect. So it's important you are in the know of such if you happen to work outside the shores of Nigeria. In families where domestic violence is actively occurring, the abusive person may likely need to be removed from the home. In some instances, the abused family members may need to enter a domestic violence shelter or be placed in a secure and confidential location away from the abuser. And families where domestic violence occurs may benefit from parenting classes and in or out of the home counseling. So what are some special issues that may affect children? Substance abuse and mental illness are two of such. By way of introduction, some children may have parents that abuse alcohol or other substances, or they may have parents who have mental illnesses. The truth is that substance abuse is a major factor in child abuse. Most people who abuse substances would abuse their children. So according to the National Council on Child Abuse and Family Violence, more than 8 million children live with a parent who abuses substance. And between 40 to 80% of homes where there's a substance abuse, there's also a child abuse. That is quite a sobering statistics. The long-term effect of a parent abusing a substance on the children includes depression, anxiety, an increased risk of the child eventually becoming a substance abuser or substance user themselves, low self-esteem on the part of the child, and such a child may have acting out behaviors, aggressiveness, violence, and the likes. So the caregiver may be the first person to recognize that a parent is abusing a substance or that a parent has mental health issues. So you want to report such observations to your supervisor and seek direction from them about what to do. And you also want to remember that if you ever feel unsafe in the home, you want to leave immediately and call your supervisor. So, what are some signs of substance abuse to look out for? An odor of alcohol on the breath of the person who abuses substances. If the parent appears unkept or the house is unkept, if the children's needs are not being met or they're being neglected, the children are not fed, they're not well clothed, they're not going to school. If the parent appears to be intoxicated, is stumbling, has slurring of speech, using abusive languages. If you come in and the parent has bloodshot eyes, or they have shaky hands and irritability, or if you find bottles and drugs hidden around the home, if the parent or the caregiver seems forgetful, moody, or they have sudden changes in behavior, or if you notice that the caregiver has insomnia, or they report that they're not sleeping for a couple of days, or if you observe bizarre behaviors, or the children report to you that they see their parents drink or use drugs, or the child seems afraid of their primary caregiver being the parent or the maybe a first relative who takes care of them. Now, some parents may also have mental illnesses without using substances. So some signs of mental illnesses you want to be on the lookout for in homes where you care for children would include, if the children's needs are not met and they may be neglected, so they're not being fed, they're not well clothed, they're not going to school, or you notice that the caregiver has insomnia, meaning they are not able to sleep, or they report to you that they've not been sleeping for a couple of days, maybe a symptom of depression, maybe a symptom of anxiety, or you observe bizarre behaviors from the parents or the parents or the primary caregiver, not you in this case, report seeing or hearing things that are not there. Or you notice the caregiver or the parent of this child is talking to themselves or what appears to be another person, even though no one is there. Or the parent appears unkept in appearance, or again, the home is unkept. Or the children report to you that their parents are manifesting strange behaviors. Or you notice a change in behavior or mood. Or you notice that the parent seems withdrawn or apathetic. They do not seem to care about what is going on around them, or the children seem afraid of the caregiver. You want to report such to your supervisor. Stress is another thing that affects children within the home. An important aspect of child development is to learn how to cope effectively with stress. Younger children are less able to understand stressful or traumatic events. They may think that they've caused a stressful event to happen. They may become unhappy, listless, they're not active, they're not vibrant. They may not want to play as usual, they may forget to do their homework. They may begin to get poor test scores in school, or even become aggressive and start to act out. Or they may begin to get in trouble usually at home or in school. This is usually different from the way the child has been behaving before. Now, older children and adolescents are oftentimes better able to understand the cause of stress, and they are able to use cognitive coping skills to deal with the stressors in their life. But they too may become anxious, depressed, hopeless, and they may make statements of wanting to hurt themselves or die. They may become aggressive, they may get into trouble in the home or at school. And sometimes adolescents who have stress may engage in risky behavior, such as driving recklessly, engaging in unsafe sexual activities, or they may begin to use drugs or alcohol just in a bid to cope, but it's an unhelpful coping mechanism. So, how do you help children cope with stress? You want to provide reassurance that a child is safe and protected. Then you want to give the child room to talk or draw out their thoughts and feelings about a stressful situation. You want to reassure the child that it's okay to feel stressed, to feel anxious or depressed. You want to reassure the child that traumatic events are not their fault. Then you want to protect the child from stressful situations as much as possible. And you want to avoid discussing stressful or traumatic events in front of them. Then, if there are misconceptions concerning the stressful event or the traumatic event, you want to correct such to the best of their ability, of your ability. And you want to explain situations in words that the child will understand. So you break it down, bring it down to their level. You want to, of course, teach children some healthy coping mechanisms to use when they're feeling stressed, such as engaging in relaxing activities. That could include listening to music, that could include dancing, coloring, engaging in physical activities such as running and biking. Okay, for families that practice religious or spiritual beliefs, you want to encourage such children to turn to these practices in time of stress. So that could be praying, that could be studying the Bible for a Christian, for a family of a Christian origin. Okay, you also want to provide support and be respectful to these practices, even if they're different from what you practice. And you want to encourage the children to talk to their own religious leaders if their religion is different from yours. For older children and adolescents, you want to talk to them about the cause of their stressors and help them plan ways to overcome the stressors. And children in these age groups are able to have a better understanding of stress, and they can think about how the future may be different without the stress. They are also able to think about what they could do to make changes to deal with stress in a better way. So this can give them hope that things can change, because things do change. Okay, and on that note, we come to the end of this presentation. As always, thank you for staying with me. Bye.